All right, guys, I've said this once, I'll say it again. Actually, I've said this once, I've said it twice, and I'll say it again. High earners are leaving Massachusetts for other states, and this is directly correlated to the high taxes that they impose on high earners, and they are leaving. They're up and leaving. The last video that I did on this was, we like to look at migration data from companies like U-Haul that show where people are moving from and to, or to and from. And this is another press release that was literally just sent to me. And luckily, I just got back from picking my daughter up. So it says, accountants renew tax reform calls as clients continue to leave Massachusetts. Massachusetts accountants representing wealthy residents renewed their calls Wednesday for a bevy of tax reforms, including overhauling the sting tax on companies to prevent the ongoing outmigration of Bay Staters and businesses. 70% of certified public accountants surveyed had at least one client change their tax domicile last year, primarily as they saw lower taxes and costs of living elsewhere, according to a new report from the Massachusetts Society of CPAs. Meanwhile, 27% of CPA business clients were mulling leaving Massachusetts when surveyed at the start of 2025, compared to 22% in 2023. So that is a 5% jump. Top obstacles to business growth in the Commonwealth included the sting tax, the individual income tax rate, and the estate tax threshold, the group said. This year's survey echoes what we hear regularly from firms and financial leaders across the state. Massachusetts is losing its competitive edge. By the way, in Boston in general, the occupancy rate for office space is up to 23%. That is above average for the entire country. So that means people and or businesses are not coming here to operate. While the findings in this report are concerning, what's even more troubling is what's not captured. The individuals and businesses who won't ever consider Massachusetts because of policies that make us an outlier. State leaders have a real opportunity to build on the momentum from the 2023 tax reform initiative to position Massachusetts for long-term success. The survey captured responses from in-state industry leaders and about 200 CPAs representing 4,600 clients whose annual taxable income exceeds $1 million, which means they are subject to the 4% income surtax that voters approved in 2022. I believe that is the millionaire's tax. As a matter of fact, Paul Craney and I talked a lot about that on our podcast episode. Nearly half of CPAs signaled their business clients view Massachusetts as becoming less competitive. The report comes a day after the Healy administration retooled the Economic Development Incentive Program tax credit as officials look to attract and retain early-stage companies and promote their job creation efforts. The majority of residents who left the state were of working age between the ages of 30 and 60 years old, according to Mass CPA's report. Popular relocation destinations include Florida, New Hampshire, Texas, and South Carolina. Of those four, only South Carolina has a state income tax. Mass CPAs recommended that Massachusetts eliminate or reform the so-called sting tax, which imposes an additional 2% excise tax on S-corps earning between $6 million and $9 million. The society said those thresholds have not changed since the tax was enacted in the 1980s. The report laments that an increasing number of small businesses now find themselves unfairly subject to this outdated tax, which was intended to protect tax benefits for small businesses while ensuring a level playing field between large S-corps and C-corps. The recent addition of a 4% surtax has further compounded the issue, pushing many S-corp shareholders into a tax burden that exceeds Massachusetts' corporate tax rate of 8%, directly contradicting the law's original intent. This additional tax on S-corps acts as a significant deterrent to business growth and investment in the Commonwealth. In another business-friendly solution, Mass EPA says Massachusetts should decouple from a federal tax provision that limits the deductibility of business interest expense. Removing this limitation would allow Massachusetts-based companies to deduct more interest from borrowing, encouraging further infrastructure investments and strengthening the local economy. Additionally, Massachusetts would align itself with 21 other states that have chosen not to impose the full federal interest expense limitation, reinforcing its commitment to fostering a pro-business environment. Lawmakers and Governor Maura Healey increased the estate tax threshold from $1 million to $2 million under the 2023 tax reform package. Mass EPA is urging policymakers to revisit that threshold and bump it up to $5 million with the aim of making Massachusetts more competitive and retaining high net worth individuals. The report points out nearby states have significantly higher thresholds, including Connecticut, that align with the federal level of $12.92 million. To prevent continued outmigration of wealth and investment, Massachusetts must remain proactive in modernizing its estate tax policies. Raising the exemption further and indexing it for inflation would make the state a more attractive place to live, retire, and pass down generational wealth, ensuring long-term economic stability and competitiveness. So, basically, what they're trying to say here is that A, businesses do not want to come here. B, businesses are leaving here. And C, so are their potential high-earning employees. This is the result of when you are overtaxing people and when you are making things less affordable for people that are providing a business opportunity to the people of the Commonwealth. And that's a fact. And I said this about the millionaire tax. You know, the problem with the millionaire tax, by the way, is that a lot of that income is based on, what is it called? It's based on capital gains, right? So what happens is if the stock market is not performing well and the markets are not performing well in general, it's a more volatile source of income. So on a surface level, the millionaire tax looks okay, but the way that that money is being distributed is a little bit volatile. So the state shouldn't be relying on that tax as much as I think that they potentially are. And they've accounted for, I didn't do a video on it, but they've basically spent all that money since enacting that tax. At least to my knowledge, I believe they spent all that money. So again, it's one thing, a lot of people complain about businesses and business, leaders or business owners, they don't pay enough in taxes, so on and so forth. But the fact is, they create jobs for people that are within the bounds of your state. If you begin taxing them even more and they take their business from point A to point B, it is more harmful than good. And they said they need to be proactive here. Really what they need to do is if businesses are already leaving, yes, they need to be proactive to an extent, but now it's at a point where they need to be retroactive and they need to change policies that they have put in place on these higher earners, or else guess what? Everybody is just going to leave, and that is going to provide less taxable income over the source of all of the employees versus creating this funnel where you're trying to generate the most taxes by the highest earners, okay? And that is a problem. And it's a huge problem because the majority of people, as pointed out in this article and as pointed out in my previous videos, people between the ages of 30 to 60 are the people that are leaving here. They're coming here. They're either starting their employment here and they're leaving once they realize how difficult it is to be a relatively high income earner here, or alternatively be a, decent income earner and the cost of living is too damn high. So when you think about it, if the cost of living is high for somebody that's moving here and maybe they're not considered a high earner, they're leaving. And then you also have the high income earners leaving as well. I mean, when is this going to stop? They have to do something about this. They kind of need to do something now in order to retain the talent, right? It's one thing to get the talent. Retaining the talent is a whole other ball game. Again, it's despicable in my opinion. So anyway, hopefully that's it for today's video, guys. I'm going to be heading to the podcast soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.